Peace and welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, we got a lot of great conversations set up for you today. First and foremost, we're going to talk about a new report that shows that hate crimes are on the rise for against black people in this country. We're going to be checking in with the assistant professor, Dr. Larry Walker, to give us his insight as to what we're seeing, and more importantly, how do we respond to this rise in violence. Also, we're going to be talking about literacy in a little bit. Folks, talking about how one author is using literacy and history to inspire the next generation of readers. And I got some great things for you for trends, posts, and doing the most. So stay with us. There's a lot to cover on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Folks, welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Happy Thursday, folks. Happy Thursday. Big shout out to my crew who's checking in on YouTube and Facebook. If you're watching us, make sure you tell all your friends and family about us as we're streaming live right now on blackstarnetwork.com and on Amazon News on your Roku TV. Folks, let's jump right into it as we have some big discussions ready for you. First and foremost, let's talk about a new report about hate crimes in America against black people. This is coming out of the education and research arm of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. Let me just share with you a little bit what this report has to say, as they're showing that there has been an increase of violence against black people in this country, particularly around presidential elections. And there is a very real concern that as we embark on the next presidential election of 2024, the trend will not be slowing down. All right, let me just share this with you, folks. This is coming out of this report. This new report shows by the Education and Research arm of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. They find that hate crimes in the United States hit record levels and surged during presidential elections. Now, analyzing the most recent available data collected by the FBI and local police departments, the Leadership Conference Education Funds report titled Cause for Concern 2024, The State of Hate, it reveals that hate crimes against racial, ethnic, and marginalized groups skyrocketed in 2021. According to findings in the report, in 2021, anti-Black hate crimes increased by 14%, anti-Hispanics or anti-Latino hate crimes increased by 35%, and anti-Asian hate increased by 168%. Wow. Here's the report, folks. This is the story that's coming out of the GRIO. It is something to see that we are in a country that is supposed to be post-racial, a country that's supposed to be moving on from the very ugly past that this country was founded upon, and that we're supposed to be in a different place. But it doesn't seem to be the case when you're looking at this new report. I want to bring in my brother, who serves as the assistant professor out of the University of Central Florida. We're always happy to talk to my brother, Dr. Larry Walker. Dr. Walker, thank you for joining us here on the Black Star Network on the Culture, brother. How are you this afternoon?
I'm good, brother. Thank you for having me. This is an important topic.
Absolutely. So what does this, first and foremost, Doc, what do you make of this recent report to say that these hate crimes are really looks like it's across the board, not just for black people, it's for Asians and for Latinos, not against white people in this country, Doc. So what does that mean? What does that say to you?
So I guess we can dispel that myth about reverse racism, right? So we can, let's get that.
Right.
Let's get that out of the way. But listen, I would just say about this report in terms of what it's highlighting. I would say this water is wet. This is consistently what we've seen, since the first enslaved Africans was brought here in Jamestown, Virginia, over 400 years ago. So it's interesting in terms of percentage breakdown by racial ethnic group. You saw obviously Asian Americans in terms of that explosion in terms of what they deal with hate crimes, but that mirrors what we've seen on television and social media the last couple of years. So it's important. You talked about presidential elections, and we have to be crystal clear about the person from the Republican side who was the nominee in 16 and 2020, and that's Donald Trump. So we clearly know from a lot of rhetoric on social media, that's why he was banned from Twitter and various other social media platforms, not only because of disinformation, because of the racial animus he was spewing on a lot of these platforms. And we still see that now with Truth Social and whatever other press releases he puts out. So we have to also make this connection. What I'm trying to say is between white supremacy historically in this country and how minoritized groups are treated. And so once again, this report is really not surprising. And for Black folks, we felt this. We felt that we witnessed these interactions. We've heard these conversations with family members, and people have gotten so bold when it comes to, like I said, spewing a lot of this nonsense. When in the past they would have kept it to themselves. But since 2016 and Donald Trump been open about a lot of this racism, it's really empowered a lot of people, and that's why we're seeing this increase. One of the reasons why we're seeing this increase.
So, and I would agree with you. And I think that, Doc, when we're looking at hate crimes, we got to get to the root of it, right? Is it just simply because one person is different from something else? Or is there something, as based on the work that you do, is it something deeper? Is it ideological? Is it political? Is it religious? What do you find to be at the root of this type of action, this type of crime?
I think a lot of these issues are this country's refusal to acknowledge its own history. It's that saying, history repeats itself. This is a new phase of Jim Crow. And I think some Americans are beginning to wake up to that. So in terms of ideology, this is consistent with what this country, in terms of bringing the first enslaved Africans here, Jim Crow, and then post, the Reagan era, etc., the Trump era. We're still, as people of African descent, still fighting for our freedom, the ability not to worry about law enforcement, to live where we want to live, to attend schools, not have to worry about our kids being harassed. So this is really all those issues. Obviously, it's ideology. We see it in terms of the ideology. We see how ideology impacts politics, because you got to make that connection. I think also important point is that we have to remember that, like I said, this country has a long history of this, and it's the groups that look like you and I, Black folks, brown folks, who are suffering because of it.
Absolutely, and I think that's the other part about it, that it becomes this very interesting intersection between your ideology and your action, and this is probably the I would say part of one of the big core elements of this discussion, that we're really getting into a space where because there is ideology, because there is a political motivation behind these hate crimes, that we're starting to see political violence happening in this country. And I don't think, Dr. Walker, I don't think, dear brother, that this country is really ready to have a conversation, whether you're talking about among Black people, white people, Asian or Latin Americans, or whoever you're talking to. I don't think this country is ready to have a very serious discussion about political violence. That is something that I think that we have seen in other parts of the world, across the waters. We talked about it from everything from the Middle East to what's happening in Africa. But to see that level of violence happening right here on a domestic home front, I don't know if we're ready to have that conversation. It almost will lead you to say, okay, we see it in the Middle East, where you have bombers go into a marketplace and commit suicide, but at the same time killing hundreds of people. Are we at that place? Are we getting to that place in this country? Is that the concern that we should be having?
Yeah, well, political violence in this country is real. Political racial violence, certainly in terms of racial violence. I could talk about here in the state of Florida, the Coy massacre, which happened over 100 years ago. That was political violence. We can look at what happened during the civil rights movement to prevent Black people from voting, grandfather clauses, etc. We could talk about the Red Summer of 1919, in which white folks went into Black communities and killed men, women, and children. This country has also, when we talk about political violence, also against its white people. JFK, Abraham Lincoln. I think when we talk about political violence, we forget not only how it's impacted, specifically Black folks, but in terms of the violence we saw inflicted on, white political leaders. I could talk about Medgar Evers. So I think I agree with you that, I don't think folks are really ready to have this conversation. And the reason why is this country has a tendency consistently to turn away from its own history. And so what we see in terms of the political violence we saw in January 6th, et cetera, we've seen an escalation of the issues that have occurred over the last several decades. And if we're not careful, as we get closer and closer to the election, we're more likely to see more political violence.
Folks, we're going to take a quick pause. When we come forward, I want to get your take on this as we were checking in with my brother, Dr. Larry Walker, out of the University of Central Florida, to talk about the new report that has come out, the report from the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights discussing hate crimes in America, how there has been an increase in hate crimes, especially around presidential elections. What's your take on this, folks? Are you concerned? And if you're not concerned, or if you are concerned, rather, how should we move forward in handling this? Join us in the conversation. Post your thoughts on Facebook and on YouTube as we're streaming there. And of course, stay tuned. We got more discussion about this very, very serious topic right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the conversation here on the Culture on the Black Star Network. We've been talking about a new report that has come out from the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. This is a report about the rise of hate crimes in America, especially during presidential elections. And this report has shown, folks, that hate crimes have gone up across the board for various marginalized communities, including the Latino community, but especially among Asian Americans and Black folks. And folks, this stuff is happening during an election season. And as you know, the 2024 election is just around the corner. And so we're asking the question of what should we expect over this next year and a half as the election gets closer, especially with the fact that former President Donald Trump has decided to run again. Donald Trump being one of the key people that have initiated or ignited this movement of political violence that we're seeing, particularly from white males. What can we expect going into 2024? We've been having a conversation with Dr. Larry Walker, assistant professor out of the University of Central Florida. And of course, I want to have the conversation with you, crew. So post your thoughts, share your take on what's happening with this report. All right, let me go to Willie Frazier. Willie, you kicking us off today, brother. Good to hear from you. You said we must realize as a majority in the states where we reside, they want the drama. We must show them through different means we are not scared. We will win again. All right, so I think Willie makes a great point, and I love the passion and the inspiration behind Willie's take. But I think that he makes an excellent point, Doc, which is 56% according to the latest data, but nearly 60% of Black people live in the Confederate States of this country, which is pretty much the southern portion of the country. These are also the same states that have some of the most racially motivated policies, political policies. These are also the states that are GOP led. These are also the states that have a history of political and racial violence. So are we just kind of putting ourselves in the lion's den here, Doc? Because I'm trying to understand, if we are moving to these states and these places have shown in the past all the way up to this present moment that they do not care about the quality of life, or they do not care about the physical life of Black people, are we putting ourselves in harm's way? Are we doing ourselves more harm than good?
I think it's a good question, but I would say no, because, listen, Black folks have been fighting a good fight consistently. And
right.
Listen, the really issue is like gerrymandering. So even with Tennessee, and when we saw those, those two brothers be, expelled, it's really about gerrymandering. A lot, using Tennessee as an example, majority of those individuals, Republicans that voted to expel them, didn't have any Democrats running against them. So they run, unopposed. And that's not democracy. So the really core issue in terms of political power in those red states is gerrymandering. And that's really the big issue. And it's also important to keep in mind is the Voting Rights Act of 1965 consistently over the last 10 years or so has been, the Republicans have consistently and purposely chipped away at. So now it is just a shell of itself. And the reason why I bring up the Voting Rights Act, because that, you had for many years up until the Shelby County Holder case, you had to go through a pre-clearance. So some of the states and jurisdictions in which we're talking about, before they could change policies, they had to go through the DOJ. That's not there anymore because Supreme Court justices believe that racism doesn't exist anymore. So that's really what we're dealing with, right? The gutting of Voting Rights Act and gerrymandering throughout many of these southern states you talked about.
Right, and because we're dealing with those things, right? Like the big appeal for many Black people in this country to move to those areas is one, the prices or the cost of living. You can get decent housing, some plot of land in some cases. The employment situation is a little bit better down there, depending on what industries you're a part of. I mean, those are those big factors, right, that are driving our people to those parts. Some of our people have moved to the South because of the coastline. It's closer to the water. But at the same time, I'm wondering, and I think about this pretty often, Doc. I'm not going to front. I think about this pretty often. I'm like, is that enough? I mean, are we really prepared? Are we taking this thing seriously? Because part of me tends to believe that there are some segments of Black America, we're just kind of like, woo, woo, just kind of like, oh, no, it's all good. It's all good. Whereas there are some really angry white people in this country. There are angry white people that are in positions of power and influence and leadership. There are angry white people that will do what we saw with what Mr. Lesser did to Ralph Yarl, who would have no empathy and shooting and attempting murder of a Black boy. I feel like maybe we're not getting the message here, Doc. And tell me if I'm wrong. I could be wrong, but I just feel like in some cases we're so thinking that things have changed that we're not looking at the present moment that we're living in.
Yeah, I think that most Black folks understand, the time in which we're dealing with right now. But one of the things I think is important is racial trauma. So, we're constantly, throughout our lives, we're constantly dealing with these events in which Black folks have been killed. We're constantly dealing with racial trauma in the places we work, go to a supermarket, we're on vacation. So I think a lot of it, what you describe is Black folks understand, and in some cases we're just tired because it accumulates over a period of time. And like I've written about racial trauma in Black folks, and we experience it throughout our lives. And I think a lot of what experience is just straight up exhaustion.
Right. And that's the part. That's the part, Doc, and that's the part, because some of us may not be prepared to put on to run this next leg of our liberation struggle, right? Like, I get it. So, when you're dealing with ongoing threats to your life, to your very existence, to your civil rights, to your humanity, it gets tiring. But I reflect on what our grandparents and great grandparents and our ancestors went through, which is there was something to keep the struggle going. Like, every generation knew what their role would be in the struggle. And I'm speaking specifically for Black people. From the time we were brought to the shores to this very moment, there's always been ways for us to be informed, to be empowered, to receive some sort of guidance on how to handle the time, how to handle those who oppose our rise and liberation, how to handle the systemic and structural racism. But then it has been watered over time. And crew, y'all talk to me on this if y'all seeing the same thing. But there's been watered over time. That passing of that knowledge of how to navigate, how to get through, how to overcome seems to be dwindling each generation. And this could just be my assessment, and I could be way wrong, Dr. Walker. You much more knowledgeable than I am on that. But I'm just seeing it from my vantage point. Like, there's something that's still missing, because I'm looking at the next generation of Black people. I'm looking at the little boys, little girls, and I'm wondering, are we preparing them for the next leg of the liberation struggle?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. It's something we had to reflect on as a people. I think that, in terms of what you're describing is, I think the next generation is prepared. And I think you see that when we see voting. So I'm gonna give an example of Wisconsin, which we know has been a majority white state, but I'm gonna use this example anyway. Or even Georgia, what we saw with the last presidential election, Black folks came out and voted. So, and because they came out and voted, Donald Trump didn't get the White House. So I think that you're seeing the younger generations mobilize. You saw the Supreme Court did when it comes to reversing Roe v. Wade. So I think that they're galvanized, but I think the difference is every generation goes about doing it a little bit differently. So This generation's approach to dealing with political, social, civil issues is different than the generation before that and the generation before that. So because it's interesting, even, when I was growing up, I can, have the same kind of conversation with family members, and I'm saying you don't have the kind of same zeal we did, but but my generation did. So I think it's this generation, it's just the way to go about doing things a little bit differently. But I do think that they're ready to move forward and have been. When we saw the last couple of years, I mean, young folks have been involved in a lot of this civil disobedience. We saw it just in Tennessee. Yeah. I mean, so with those brothers. So I think the generation is just, they do it a little bit differently.
And you know what, to that point, brother, I have, as in my work of working with young people in Baltimore and across the country, I've seen that. But also in my work with those young leaders, when I talk to them and ask them, okay, has your family been involved in the movement? Have they been involved in the struggle? And guess what? They say no. Oh, no, my family, this is like, nah, man, they never really got into activism like that. They never got involved in movement work. And it's like, wow. So we all also looking at first generation liberation workers, liberation warriors, right? At the same time, like, even though we have been exposed to some of the most brilliant examples of freedom fighters, from Dr. King to Malcolm X to whoever you want to pick in the past 50 to 60 years of this country, there's still I'm talking about this current generation right now, the young people, college age students, 20-year-olds and some 30-year-olds, they're like first generation freedom fighters. And it's interesting that they have come to this work not because of their family, but because of the culture. They become to this work because of the music. They come to this work because they are just simply tired. Like it's like the tiredness that their parents had spilled over to them, but because they have this level of fearlessness, they're like, you know what, bump it. I'm going out in the streets, man. I can't even live. I can't just go along to get along. And I'm seeing that. I'm seeing that, Doc, with a lot of young people. Look, MJ checked in and said, look, I agree, Farajii. Too many Black and brown people underestimate the seriousness and depth of those white folks' anger, hate, and willingness to act out against us. We're talking about that. We're seeing that right now. You know, yesterday we talked to Dr. Walker about the Oklahoma audio leaks. And I got an update on that. But the fact that you have some public officials who will go on record and say, yeah, I wish I could just wrangle up a black person and rope and take a damn rope. I mean, this is in 2023. It's like nothing has changed in some cases. And I'm wondering if we really understand that the seriousness that some white people and the hatred runs so deep in this country that they're willing to even put themselves out there and to even say it. I wish I can get a damn rope to hang them up. I wish I can find a hole to shoot a reporter and kill him. I mean, these are public officials. So the culture is shifting towards, once again, this level of hatred, a deep-seated hatred among black folks. Doc, you got the final word before we take our next pause.
Listen, man, what you heard on that videotape is taking place in boardrooms, universities, everywhere. People, even neighbors, you know, people we think that you even talk to or share a cup of coffee with. That's really how they feel. And what you see, you know how we know that? Because we see that Donald Trump almost won the election in 2020 after winning in 2016, after bumbling, things for 4 years. So I think that highlights an example of there are a lot of folks that we don't think like that actually do.
Absolutely. Firewall of facts. You say black people have only lived in America the last 55 years with no law on the books, making them a second-class citizen. 1968, Loving versus Virginia ended the last law based on skin color to present. You also say that black people have only been U.S. citizens for 155 of that 247 years, 1868, 14th Amendment to present. Previously, they were enslaved Africans who were considered property. We still can't even get certain things off the books. In some states, to Firewall of Facts point, to some states, there are states that in this country right now that don't even recognize the full humanity. Hell, the country still doesn't recognize the full humanity of black people. We act as if the Constitution has completely been amended to say 5/5 of a human being. It still says 3/5 of a human being. We haven't talked about it. It would take moving a mountain to change it, which I understand politically that it shouldn't. It is what it is, but it's still on the books. And when you're talking about people who are like, oh, I am a constitutionalist, I am a person that goes word for word with the Constitution, I question that. I question when somebody tells me I'm word for word for every law that's in the book, whether it's for the country or for a state. I question that because now I'm thinking, yeah, well, that means that you're going along with racism at this point. You're not even thinking about the evolving culture of this country. So it's very, very concerning. Look, Doc, we're going to take a quick pause. When we come forward, more talk about this new report. And of course, I'm going to get your comments and of course, continue to get the expertise from Dr. Larry Walker. Stay with us, folks. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking about a new report that's come out from the Leadership Conference on Human Rights and the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, talking about the rise and increase of hate crimes in America, especially during presidential election. That is the cover of the report, The Cause for Concern 2024, The State of Hate. And folks, I'm trying to sound the alarm here. I got my brother, Dr. Larry Walker, who is the assistant professor out of the University of Central Florida. We're sounding the alarm here that there is something that we need to take a look at. This is part of the problem as to why we're not seeing the progress that we need to be made. There are active efforts, and I think, Dr. Walker, you would agree with me, there are active efforts and forces in this country that's preventing the rise of Black people. And I'm going to go as far as to say it's not just about the ballot box. It's not just about the vote. The sister that the Leadership Conference president, Miss Maya Wiley, she talked about this report. She's the CEO of the Leadership Conference Education Fund. She talks about this report. And she said, quote, let's put the second quote on the screen, please, Keenan. She said, it would be wrong to not take this data and recognize that we have to assume it will increase again in this election cycle, and that we have the opportunity to get out ahead of it, to prepare for it, and to reduce it. Now, I agree with her. Dr. Walker, how do we start that process? How do we not just talk about it, but truly prepare for it, and prepare for it in a way that we can reduce it?
Well, this is the big DOJ-ish, challenge. But let me say, since I mentioned the DOJ, that, the Office of Civil Rights is led by Kristen Clark. She's done a phenomenal job holding individuals, whether it's law enforcement, correction officers, police officers, corrections officers, et cetera, responsible for their actions. So it certainly starts with the DOJ at the federal level. But the state level, we're not even called reluctance. You've got a lot of these. We talked about in the South. A lot of these state legislators are dominated by Republicans, right-wing Republicans, who don't care anything about any civil liberties. And how do we know that? Well, we continue to, people ignore changing laws to make sure law enforcement being held responsible when it comes to these unjustified killings of Black and brown folks. I might also add, in terms of caring about violence per se against minoritized groups, and also how states are ignoring that, is they refuse to do anything about these gun laws, because we know disproportionately that Black communities are hurt or impacted by these loose gun laws. Just in the state of, for instance, state of Florida, the governor just recently signed within the last week and a half a permitless bill when it comes to guns that will take effect July 1st.
A permitless bill for guns? Wait a minute, let me just hold on, wait a minute. In the state of Florida,
you heard me right.
Ron DeSantis signs a bill that you can have a gun without a permit?
Starting July 1st. And then you know why you didn't hear about it? Because he did it very quietly. And like late at night, he signed the bill just before midnight, about a week and a half ago. So the reason why he was silent is because law enforcement doesn't want the bill. They don't want a bill. If you're a cop, why would you want people riding around who don't have a permit and have guns in the car? But he signed it. So it takes effect July 1st of this year.
So that means that you can be in possession of a gun, don't need a permit, in a state that Stand Your Ground law originated and was born from.
Yeah, and that's code red for Black folks.
Code red, brother.
And then you got permitless, because you don't know who's carrying. So I'm driving my car, I'm getting some gas, and you got a problem with my car. Maybe you got a problem with the way I look, or maybe a problem with me, my very existence. And all you have to do is walk up to me. And look, I'm from Philly, so I'm I lived in Baltimore and DC also.
Right.
So forget the terminal degree stuff, right? So
right.
If you come up to me and say something, my first response is going to be to come back and say, hey, listen, is everything okay? But when you have these stand your ground laws and these loose gun laws, I have to be reflective now as a black man to make sure if someone it comes to me and is aggressive, that I'm really going to be very careful. Because once again, I don't want to end up on a poster, and I don't certainly want to have you on my show talking about, remember from, Dr. Walker used to be on this show. He was a victim of some, white supremacists. I don't want that to happen. I have a family.
That is, see, and see, I'm kind of left speechless here, Doc. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm a little speechless, and I'm so happy that you shared this information with us with the community today. Because it speaks volumes exactly as to what we're seeing. Like this is really happening. This is really happening. And, either we as black folks get into our heads that this is really happening, or we're going to continue to have these conversations, these circular conversations, these victims conversations, these conversations about the wildness, the craziness of white people. This is really happening, folks. Absolutely. And if a man like a Ron DeSantis, who some would say is leading the cultural revolution in this country from Florida, not from Washington, not from California, but from Florida, is shaping what the agenda should look like for the angry white male.
Yeah, it's crazy,
man. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is getting to a place where it's like, see, and this leads to my next question, because this leads to my next point, brother. And I'm so happy again that you brought this up, because I know for me, I didn't hear about this, and I'm sure that some of our folks, our crew members, didn't hear about this. The National Urban League, they put out a report earlier this week, talked about democracy in peril. I'm sure you know about it. And it talked about social issues like banning books, that's a threat to democracy. Banning Black history is a threat. They talked about climate change and some of these other things, but not much on violence outside of the violence in our neighborhoods. But I'm talking about this level of violence, structural, where it comes from the governor's hands, or political violence that we saw on January the 6th. It wasn't as much on that level of violence. And now, if we're opening up the conversation to that should be, this political violence against Black people and Black people interests should be one of the top things. Because my sister Maya Wiley, she pointed us out in her statements about this report that we're talking about. She said, organized hate. Let me just make sure I got my sister's view correctly. She said, organized hate is a threat to democracy. And I'm going to go as far as to say, I understand my sister from saying that. She said, no, organized hate is trying to wage war on our democracy. Organized hate is waging war on our lives. Like, if we keep putting this situation in a political context, a political space where it's like, oh no, we got to get certain people into office. No. It ain't about getting certain people into office, because I don't give a damn about an office if the governor is allowing people to carry guns. Like you said, as a Black man, you're not thinking about your degrees. You're not thinking about your political commentary. You're thinking about your life. So organized hate is trying to wage war on our lives. And I'm saying organized hate, if it comes down from the governor's office, that means it is essentially going to be empowered and emboldened for white men, white women, or those who have hatred in their hearts for anybody outside that is different from them. It's going to embolden them to take acts. And guess what? Those acts will not suffer the consequences. They won't feel the full brunt of justice against them, especially in a state like Florida. Doc, help me here, brother. Help me. I'm trying to make sense of it all. I'm trying to process it.
Listen, you navigating it as we have this, like you said, we have these conversations is really important. But I got to tell you, man, when I describe Florida as the right-wing capital of the United States.
Right.
Because it is creating a template that other conservative right-wing states are adopting. Texas, Idaho, etc. You see DeSantis, whatever right-wing policy, higher education, anti-gay bills, whatever it is, it's been replicated throughout the United States. And so we're in a new era of reconstruction, basically. And listen, I know we have Black folks at very powerful federal, state level, various state levels, and powerful positions, and few in corporate America and education, etc. But we're in it right now because, and I first of all, we talk about the study you just highlighted. That study is consistent with the DOJ has described in terms of the statistics they put out in terms of hate crimes. And to his credit, President Biden has talked about this a lot. VP Harris has talked about it a lot. We saw her in Tennessee. Was it last week before last? So to credit to the administration and talking about it, and DOJ taking steps, like I said, through the Office of Civil Rights. But it's really important that the folks who are watching this and share with other people, Black folks, that this is not going to stop, because a lot of these states, like Florida and Tennessee, have super majorities at the state level. So they're going to keep passing this kind of legislation that really feed this centuries-long hate of Black folks. And so we're going to have to continue to fight. There is no let up, and we're in this together. But we got to make sure, like you would talk about the new generations, that they have the necessary skills to fight this war.
Absolutely. We got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, more conversation as we talk about the state of hate, the big report that has been released, and more importantly, talking about the impact that it has on Black folks, how we're going to respond. Stay with us, folks. The conversation continues here on the Culture on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
We feel the hidden impacts of climate change that land harder in Black, brown, and Native communities.
Not many people talk about it because they clearly don't know our lives. But with President Biden's landmark infrastructure and climate plans, our issues are finally seen.
Removing lead pipes means we know our water is safe. Cutting carbon pollution helps our kids breathe easier. 1.5 million new jobs means stable work in communities. The impact we need
right now.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland@RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Been having a very, very timely conversation about the state of hate in this country based on this latest report coming out of the leadership conference. A very important conversation that I've been having with my brother, Dr. Larry Walker, assistant professor out of the University of Central Florida, and you. And I hope that that you're gaining something from this discussion. But the biggest thing I hope is that you understand the level of seriousness of the time that we're currently living in. Johnny Davis, you checked in, bro. You said most groups don't think about democracy. They think about themselves. It's not always done violently, but it's a different type of violence, which is subtle but effective. Right. Look, I get it that we want to put everything in this space of democracy, and I'm going to bring my brother, Dr. Larry Walker, back into the frame. I get it, dear brother, that we want to put this in the context of democracy, but I don't know if that's resonating in terms of messaging. I don't know if that message is resonating as much as if you put it in terms of life or death. And I know that I hate to be the like Chicken Little type of guy, the sky is falling and it's all of those things. But I think just to let people know, like, you can't sugarcoat the time that we're living in. You can't try to appease or appeal to someone's ignorance or their lack of wanting to know what's actually going on, because, you know, you're like, oh, I don't want to hurt nobody. I don't want. No, that's how we got into this problem. You said it in your remarks, Doc, in the beginning. America has not yet fully accepted and confronted its past. It's not accepting and confronting its present. And therefore, how can we say we're going to have a just, equitable, and progressive future if we can't, if we jumped over we went from A to F and missed everything in between?
So let me give an example, kind of what we're talking about, you know, especially democracy. If January 6th happened here in the United States, if that happened anywhere else, what would the United States' reaction have been? Right. We would be calling on, you know, we'll go to the United Nations, and call for a formal inquiry to find out what is happening in this unknown, unnamed country. What happened right here in the United States, which was, you know, kind of cradle of democracy. But our democracy is in peril. You know, and January 6th, in many respects, reminds me, like, you know, we talk about, you know, earthquakes. And so it was a significant tremor. And it is a tremor, but it's not whatever the highest category is for earthquakes. So it was a significant tremor. The point I'm making is it could be far more violent and certainly more polarizing. And in terms of the impact it has on our society and our democracy, can be far more significant if don't pay attention. And once again, I'll give credit for DOJ for prosecuting many of those individuals who were involved in the insurrection. They should continue to prosecute them as they name them, identify and name them. But once again, that is a 5-alarm fire. It is a warning sign that our democracy is not healthy. And if we don't continue to address our history, then once again, it's the point you made, and you talked about earlier, that how can we possibly prepare for the future if we don't understand where we came from and where we are today?
That's very real. Brother, that's very real. Jawan, you checked in. You said this kind of hatred has always been around, but 8 years of a black man in the White House increased the hatred, and Trump gave it a bullhorn. And that's fine. That's all fine. I get that. And Jawan, I'm glad you brought the point up. I get that. But now we're going into 2024, Dr. Walker. We're a year and a half out, or a year and some change out from the next election. And guess what? Right now, as it stands, even though Ron DeSantis has been on the leader or the front lines of the cultural movement for conservatives and for white supremacy and all that stuff, you know, Trump is still considered to be a viable candidate. And I was reading that there are donors who are not happy with how DeSantis has handled some other state issues. And right now, you know, Trump is actually getting supported while he is up for. I mean, he's been indicted
already. Right, and will be indicted. And it's not like it's the only obstacle, legal obstacle he's got to deal with. He's also been accused of rape. That trial.
He's accused of rape. He's been accused of fraud. He's of course we know his connection with the January 6th situation. His case in Georgia is still yet to happen, right? I mean, but people are getting, and I'm talking about big money donors are still giving money to this guy, backing him, telling DeSantis, hey man, you don't look like the guy that we need. We're kind of gonna have to roll with Trump on this one. So how do black people in this country, how do brown folks in this country, how do voters in this country reconcile the insanity of that, and then say we're going to have a just election process, we're going to have an election period without violence? Like, this is really happening.
Yeah, I would argue we've never had a just society. You talk about the history. Voting Rights Act was passed in '65. I mentioned earlier, in '68 we had the Fair Housing Act. Those signed by LBJ considered the Great Society programs. But if you use '65 as a marker, you could highlight that was the end of de jure segregation. So when people talk about racism in the country, that's 50, 60 years ago. You can argue that black folks have only had less than 60 years or so to overcome centuries of obstacles. So in terms of where we are right now, you talk about DeSantis. You're right. A lot of articles in New York Times, et cetera, are suggesting that donors are pulling back because he's to the right of his own donors, which is crazy in itself, and certainly is benefiting Trump. But either one of these individuals, whoever gets the nomination, is a threat to democracy. And so, I think it's going to be Donald Trump because, DeSantis hasn't been announced yet and his poll numbers are plummeting. So I think that, you're going to find that Donald Trump will be the nominee, but he's probably going to, by then, he's probably, like you said, the special counsel, Georgia, was happening in the state attorney in Georgia. He's going to have been indicted and probably had multiple, court cases, already in the legal system.
I got to laugh from crying, brother, because I cannot believe it. This dude can get through all of this stuff and people are still putting money on him. And that speaks volumes about where we are in this country. And people get mad. If I even make the hint, Dr. Walker, hey man, if Trump is on the ballot, y'all gonna vote? Can we have a very serious conversation? Because some people are like, well, if he gets back in, look at the state of this country. Look, it's not like that we haven't been voting. It's not like we haven't been involved in our communities. I'm talking about black folk. It's not like we haven't appealed to the DOJ for justice. It's not like we have haven't done all of these steps that everybody has been saying, well, maybe y'all should try this. Maybe you should try that. Maybe you should do this. But the one thing that we have not fully done is remove ourselves from the process. That's the one thing that we have not done en masse. Yes, there's a segment of our people that's done it. There's another segment here, but I'm saying en masse. The one big thing that we have not done, and I see some of y'all quoting the Bible, talking about the Hebrews and God and everything, but the one thing that God said is what? Come out of her, my people. The one thing we have not fully done is removed ourselves from the process. We don't know what the future may look like with that. And I understand there's fear with that. But have we not tried other things? And what have they garnered as a result of our attempt? I know, Doc. I know.
Listen, I think this conversation, why your show is so important, that's why I applaud you and appreciate you. It's really important for us to have these convos and put it out there in your platform and have this ongoing dialogue. But as I said earlier, our democracy is in peril, and it's going to impact black folks the most. And if we don't continue to be serious about forcing people to change, we're always going to deal with these issues. And look, to your point about people voting, black folks voting, listen, the Biden administration and the Trump administration will be dramatically different. And I hope folks, when we saw the 4 years of Trump and how he handled COVID and bumbled a bunch of other foreign affairs issues, that we would be in a far worse situation if we hadn't, if Joe Biden hadn't won the election. It's that simple.
Right. I agree. I'm not going to disagree, but something has to be done. Whether you're talking about, trying to reduce hate crimes in this country, or whether we're talking about trying to find our way through this political madness that we're in, especially with our relationship as a community with various states where we reside down in the South and in other parts of the country, we have to find a way to gain some power, because right now we're going to continue to become victims at every stop, locally, statewide, and on a federal level. Dr. Larry Walker, Assistant Professor, University of Central Florida, my brother, it has been such an honor to chat with you today. I certainly would love to bring you back on, but I truly, truly appreciate your expertise and your insight this afternoon.
Thanks for having me, brother. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. All right, folks, man, oh man, a lot to digest there. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, let's talk about youth literacy and how one author is using her power to write to inspire the next generation of readers with literacy and history. Stay with us. That discussion is up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
I love y'all. All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Farajii Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. Thank you so much for tuning in to the conversation. Make sure that you're doing your part to support us here at Black Star Network. Go to the website at blackstarnetwork.com. And more importantly, continue to share the information and let people know we are rocking and rolling with this digital media platform. All right, I want to have another conversation. We're going to switch gears a little bit because that was such a enlightening discussion that we just had with Dr. Larry Walker, and I truly appreciate my brother for checking in. But I wanted to have a conversation about literacy and history, how one author is doing her part to inspire the next generation of readers about the work that she's doing, And we want to welcome to the airwaves of the Black Star Network and to the culture, Miss Melissa Parks. Melissa, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. How are you feeling this afternoon?
I'm great. Thank you so much. And it's such a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. All right, Melissa, let's talk a little bit about you, and then we'll get into the conversation about the book that you have out, Hero 44, which is a it's a book to help young people to understand President Barack Obama, and more importantly, how they can do something to change the world that they're living in. But let's talk about you. Share with folks, your story as an author and as a woman getting to this place to becoming an author.
Well, I am an educator. I've been an educator for the last 16 years. So I've worked in intervention. And during working with students that I'm trying to get up to level, I noticed some things that they needed. And I thought it was very important that as an educator that I touch on what could help them. And the number one thing is with reading. I have a lot of students that struggle in reading. So I created a book that will help struggling readers. It's unfortunate. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Melissa.
It's unfortunate that the pandemic, came along, and during that time, our students lost a lot of time in school. And the number one thing that they are suffering from is reading. Of course, reading is something that, all students should not struggle with at all.
Right, absolutely. Because we're seeing reading in a very different space. I want to kind of take a moment, because in preparing for our conversation today, Melissa, I had to take a look at some of the numbers around literacies, particularly among Black youth. And yes, you may have came across these numbers, but let me just tell you, sis, this ain't looking good for us. This is not looking good for us at all. Folks, I want you to take a look at some of these numbers here that we gather around the issue of literacy. Take a look. According to the National Assessment of Educational Progress, NAEP, a sector of the United States Department of Education, 84% of Black students lack proficiency in math, and 85% of Black students lack proficiency in reading. Now, in California, 90% of students cannot do math or read well. In New York, the numbers are 85% in math and 82% in reading. In Illinois, it is 86% cannot do math well, 85% cannot read well. In Texas, the numbers are 84% can't do math and 89% can't read. Maryland, my home state, sits at 86% for math and 80% for reading. The state of South Carolina, 90% for math and 87% for reading. In Georgia, the numbers are 86% and 82%. In Missouri, it is 89% for can't do math and 88% can't do reading. And in Washington, D.C., the numbers are 85% can't do math and 87% can't do reading. This is what they consider to be, folks, for those who don't know, that when they say that our young people are functionally illiterate, they mean that those young people are unable to manage daily tasks and handle employment tasks. They're not able to get through the day. They're not able to handle the responsibilities of becoming grown adults. Have you come across these numbers, Melissa?
Unfortunately, I have. And that had a lot to do with what I created. And my books are designed to help young learners. In the process of reading and starting to read, there are 3 books in one. The first book is called I Like Being Brown. The second book is This Family. And the third book is Hero 44. And all 3 stories together make up Small Trilogy. And if you read my trilogy for 3 months consecutively, your reading level can progress up a level. So the I Like Being Brown is the preschool book, and This Family is the kinder book, and Hero 44 is the first grade book. So if you read my book consecutively for 3 months, you can improve your reading level.
And I mean, that's the thing. Because when we're finding out, Melissa, that we are at an 80% plus in terms of reading level, that we can't do math, we're functionally illiterate. Look, man. I don't think it's, and I hate to be a conspiracy theorist, but when you see these numbers, it almost makes you want to ask the question, is this by design? That in some of the states where we are the highest population, that our children can't read proficiently. Is this by design? Do you feel that way as an author, as an educator? Do you feel like, you know what? This is a little bit like the patterns are popping up too much for Black children, that Black children are not doing well in this area or that area, this subject matter and that subject matter. That's where my mind is going. It's like, okay, if it was like, I'm from Baltimore, but I live in Los Angeles. So if I'm like, oh, well, okay, that's just a Baltimore thing versus an LA thing. But it's not. It really isn't. It's a Maryland thing. It's a California thing. It's this thing. It's that thing. And it's like, at the end of the day, you're like, this almost feels like it's intentional.
Yes. And I would have to agree, because you and I used to be students ourselves, and we did have, I'd say, access to educators who helped us to learn how to read. And it's unfortunate, but our students today are not getting that same opportunity.
Right. So talk to us about, like, you have your books, which is like a step-by-step process to getting a student from one level to another reading level, right? Was this because of your education background? Like, what was the real inspiration for you to break down your reading system like this?
Yeah, it was definitely because I work in intervention and I see the students struggling, and I kind of pinpointed where they were struggling at as far as reading goes, and I just use that to help me create my trilogy.
Right. I want to, Keenan, I think we have some shots of the book, of the covers of the book. I want folks to see it, because this is the work that our sister is doing. There we go. Boom. I Like Being Brown by Melissa Parks is an opportunity, and it's a resource that folks can definitely use to get their child to a reading level. Look, I know we got to take a quick pause. Melissa, when we come back, I want to get your take on how we value literacy in the Black community, right? You're from Carson, California, based upon your bio. You know, you understand that in South LA, for example, there are resources that there, and then there's some resources that are not there, right? Like in a lot of Black communities across this country. So how do we make sure that we create a space to encourage our children to become proficient readers? And I want to get your take on that. We can talk about it from the community side, and then certainly talk about it from the parental household side. So we'll have that conversation up next. Folks, we want you to join us as I'm checking in with educator and author Melissa Parks. She talks about her book, and more importantly, talking about inspiring youth through literacy and history. Stay with us. It's The Culture right here on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary
being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. We've been checking in with educator and author Melissa Parks as she's been talking to us about her books that she's been putting out to help the next generation of young readers, of young people to be inspired to become proficient readers by using history and other cultural incentives. Melissa, it's always good to see you once again. And I'm glad that we're having this conversation about the importance of literacy. But I want to kind of delve a little deeper because you're an educator. You've been doing this for a while. You've talked to parents. You know what the dynamics of community are like. How do we make sure that we do put literacy at the top of the priority list in terms of community values, right? When I was growing up, we had a library. I didn't have to travel to the library. I was always surrounded by books, whether it was at home or whether it was at school, whether it was at my faith, my worship place. Like books and learning and knowledge was always emphasized. That's why I'm an avid reader. So I love reading. I love learning. But I don't know if this is still a value for a lot of people, if this is a value among families, this is a value among communities. What have you seen as an educator and now as an author? Is this still a top priority for folks?
It should be. And right now, because times are so tough, it's hard to have a parent there with their child when they come home from school to continue their learning, quote unquote. It's important that we value our children's education, and as a community, we should not leave it up to the school system to teach our children. When they come home, it still should be continued. And me,
wait a minute, hold on, Melissa, hold on. You can't be dropping jewels like that, sister, and then just moving on. Can't do that. No, I'm serious. You can't do that, Melissa. You're saying that we should not just put all of our eggs in the school's basket when it comes to teaching our children.
Yes,
wow.
Parents.
Wait a minute, hold on. Now, even if you have great Black teachers, great educators who may not be Black, but just great educators, that's still not enough.
Yes, I really feel that a child gets the most education at home. So it doesn't matter if you have a one-parent home or a two-parent home. As long as the parents are involved in the children's education, it really makes a difference. Like I said, me as an educator, I can almost tell who studies at home, which student studies at home with parents. I mean, it comes out so vividly because they're, on top of things, they're on top of their tasks. I mean, I only have to maybe coerce them just a little because they're being taught at home. And the majority of my students are not. They're not, and it shows. It really does. But I totally get it because this is a hard time for everybody. We have a lot of parents that, like I said, work all the time trying to make ends meet. So it leaves our kids at a disadvantage.
So would you recommend, as we're talking about the school system, right?
Yes.
Do you take the approach that the school system has failed Black youth in the areas of math and reading proficiency?
Recently, yes, I do agree with that because I see the numbers. I see the numbers, and it's really, really disheartening to me. But it probably only takes one person to get positivity going, and I really feel like I'm that person. So that's my next venture. I want to start incorporating how it is so important for students to have a connection with their parents and to learn more at home.
All right, so then that opens the conversation, Melissa, about whether it would be advantageous for us to keep using our greatest investment, quote unquote, our children. Should we keep putting them into a school system that is not teaching them the basics and getting them truly prepared for life?
Definitely, because students need that social interaction with other students. So
right.
Keeping them away from school wouldn't be a good idea. But what I am an advocate for is for students to continue their learning at home with parents. Number one is because they feel more comfortable in that setting. They know their mom, they know their dad, and just having them read to them, is learning. So if we can emphasize as educators how important this is, maybe we can turn things around.
All right, so one of our culture crew members, Melissa, Janice Morris, checked in and said, how can parents who are uneducated teach their children? That's a good one. That's a big one, right?
That I have come across. So it's very important, like I said, for parents to have a connection with their child and also with their teachers. Talking to us, letting us know what they think their student needs is very important as well. So if they need extra support that they're not getting at home, please feel free to talk to us and let us know what we can do as educators to help you at that point.
Now let's talk a little bit about the cultural influences of this, because we do know that, even though the child is with their parents or among their families for a good portion of the time, especially young children, they are still shaped by the cultural influences. My guy, Real Brooklyn, he said you can hear the deficiencies when some of these NBA and NFL stars talk. Really sad, really sad. Talking about our athletes and how they express themselves. Is how do you combat that?
Well, I'm not sure how to combat it, but I do know that, reading is the number one thing that our students are lacking. And it is important that we address this. I mean, there's a lot of people, kind of sweeping it under the rug, but that's not going to help our culture, what we need right now. And like I said, it takes a community to try and get this happening for kids.
Absolutely, absolutely. Would you say that, I wanted to kind of think about this because it sounds like there still needs to be some organizing. There needs to be some partnership between households and parents between the community and establishing some safe spaces that children can read. Like I said, I grew up in a neighborhood where we had libraries, right? I didn't have to go to the library. I went to the library, but I didn't really have to because there were books all over the place. In my household with my children, I'm fine. We have books all over the place. It's so many books. We don't have enough space for them, to be honest with you, Melissa. We have books all over the place. But I do recognize that some communities might need to do some organizing work, need to go out and say, okay, create a instead of just doing just a normal block party, that you have you can have at the block party a table full of books to encourage literacy, encourage children to, hey, while you're out here getting your hot dogs and jump around in the moon bounce, why don't you pick up a couple of books? I've seen in some neighborhoods, and I'm sure folks have seen this, where they have outside of people's homes, they have the little boxes where they can basically put a book in and somebody can take the book out and return the book, those type of things to encourage some level of literacy. What are some of the things that you recommend that communities can start doing, very kind of low-hanging fruit things that they can start doing to encourage some literacy?
I really wish that we would continue to increase the book to every student, the books to every student. Because right now, I remember beforehand, before the pandemic years ago, we would always give out books. Kids would get books all the time, so it was no reason for anybody to say, well, I can't read because I don't have any books. We were really distributing books out to students. So
right.
That process has slowed down. And I think that is contributing to our problem, to our issues as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Here's something I've seen people do during the Halloween period and even during the holiday season. Instead of giving children games and toys, they gave books. I've actually seen people during the Halloween, they'd be like, trick or treat, and they give them candy in a book. And I'm that's interesting. And the crazy part is, though, Melissa, we're going to take a quick pause, and when we come back, I want you to get more information about your book, Hero 44. But the crazy part is that people tend to believe, and I don't know where this comes from, that children don't like to learn and read. Like when you're a child, if we can all remember when we were like 5 or 6 or 10 years old, like there was this thirst to learn more and to wonder and to be curious and to explore. Like this is a natural tendency of the child, right? And it's interesting that people's like, oh, my children don't like to read. It's like, no, your children do like to read, but you may not like to read, and therefore you become like this wall for them to not like to read. You create an atmosphere in your household where they don't like to read. And I often wonder, like, why do we put that on children? Children don't come into the world and say, look, I don't want to learn nothing. I don't want to read nothing. I don't want to do nothing. Children come into the world wanting to do everything, learn everything, touch everything, and be everything. And how can we get back to that place, Melissa?
Well, I always call it animated. I'm very animated as an instructor, and it gets their attention. It makes them be interested, and it also creates a rapport with them, like she really cares about us. That's what's very important. We need to get involved. Adults, parents, teachers, everybody needs to get involved in this process to make an improvement. Because if it keeps going the way it is going, it's not going to be good. Not good at all.
Absolutely. Not at all. Not at all. Look, we're going to take a quick pause. When we come back, we'll just get some final remarks from you, talk about your book, Hero 44, and give people an opportunity to support the work that you're doing, Melissa. And, of course, continue to share some thoughts from our online culture crew. So, folks, stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
I'm I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We've been checking in with educator and author Melissa Parks, as she's been talking to us about literacy, inspiring youth through literacy and history. And Melissa is an author who is looking to change the conversation and the dynamics about reading and making sure that it's becoming easier for Black youth in particular to make it through the steps to becoming more proficient in literacy. Melissa, we got a final few moments with you, and I truly, truly appreciate you for joining us and having this conversation because of the great work that you're doing, putting some great information out there, great content out there. I wanted to kind of take a final few moments to share some of the work that you're doing, especially around that book, Hero 44. That's an interesting book. This is a book about former President Barack Obama.
Yes.
I think a lot of people know who he is, right?
Yes, they do. And I'm so glad they do. All books are directed toward the Obama family. And I chose to write a book about them because, of course, personally, I'm very, very, I admire them so much, for what they accomplished as a Black couple. And there was a lot that happened behind the scenes at the White House, but we never saw that side. We always saw the positive side. And it takes a lot of humility for that to happen. And I just admire them both for that. And Hero 44 is one of my favorites out of all three books because it definitely, I don't want to be a spoiler if you haven't read the book yet. But it definitely tells us how outstanding our first lady and a president, it's very educational. I'll just put it like that without telling you about it.
Is Hero 44, and is this for what age group, Melissa?
Hero 44 is the first grade book. So,
first grade book.
Like I said before, I Like Being Brown is the preschool book. This family is the kinder book, and Hero 44 is the first grade book. And it just tells you about Obama and how fabulous he is. And, it's educational. It's educational at the same time. You're learning American history while learning to read. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a definite.
And I have to share in your admiration. He's one of the few. If I had to choose like a lot of people that I would love to chat with, it would be President Obama. He's on the list for me as well. So I get it. I totally get it. Actually, it would probably be Michelle. Yeah.
How about both of them?
I think it would have to be like both of them, right?
But they are so. I'm sorry, there are powerful couple that we definitely should teach our little ones about.
Yeah, absolutely. When we're talking about this this book and to any other new projects or new resources that you put out there, are you thinking about just what's your thought process? Is it like, okay, I'm going to write a book for first graders, or is there something else that you include in that process?
Well, I think it's important that when we're learning about history. And also, we're learning about culture. So I put both of those together to create the trilogy. It's not only for Black and Brown students, it's also for all students. This teaches everyone, that's in preschool. I understand that preschoolers learn from rhyming. So all 3 of my books rhyme, just to get the kids' interest. Because going back to what I said before, you have to be animated. You gotta get those kids' attention for them to be interested in reading in the first place. So my book kind of grasps their attention and they want to, yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. One of our online culture crew members, Melissa Nicole Spicer, she said we have to remember that learning extends beyond the classroom. Learning extends beyond the classroom. I agree with Nicole wholeheartedly. How do we do that on a first grade, second grade, in the elementary school level? How do we take that to the next level?
We read. We read with our child. If they're not reading to you, you're reading to them. Reading is one of the ways to help your student learn more. A lot of people will possibly disagree with me, but in the years of teaching, I've learned that reading is very important to your learning.
Is it, and I'm not trying to put one is better than the other, but is reading more important than math? Or is it just like both are in the same space, they're kind of equal?
That's a good question. I really think they're both important because you got to know how much money you have if you go into the store. So it's very important. But what we are really missing in my community is reading. So I really think that it's important for our students to focus on reading and then math, but I'm sure they're both important.
Janice Morris checked in. You talked a little bit about culture, saying the importance of, literacy on our culture and understanding that. Janice said we need a Black culture that is competitive in education with other races. And I think to Janice's point, we do, but should we keep that in mind that this is quote unquote a competition? I know that, growing up and even in my high school and college years, people have always kind of emphasized, your skills, the higher your skill levels, the more competitive you can be in the job market, in the marketplace. But is that a good approach for us as we're trying to rear children who feel valuable, who see their humanity, who can see the value of other people? Should we create this kind of competition space when you're talking about just natural human growth and cultivation and development?
Well, first of all, our kids need to know who they are. So it's very important for us to incorporate our culture when we're reading or studying or teaching our students. So we shouldn't feel bad about that. But eventually we will, as parents or teachers, we will let the students know while we're teaching them that, it's a, how can I say, it's a rainbow. It's a rainbow of people, right?
Right.
Not just Black people, it's not just brown people, but it's Caucasian, there's Asian people. And if you are educated, you will know how to incorporate that in your reading and studying with your child.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Melissa, it has been a joy and a privilege and pleasure to have this conversation with you. How can people get a copy of Hero 44? How can people learn about the work that you're doing as an author and as an educator and just overall being so good for the culture?
You can follow me on Facebook at MSMPAR and MSMPAR twice. I don't regularly give that out because the students kind of tend to get my address and send me DMs, so it's kind of awkward sometimes, but you can follow me. You can follow me on Facebook. And I'm just like so glad to be a part of your show today. And I was listening in, when I signed on, and I noticed that you were talking about how important it is to, understand what we're going through right now with the, how can I say it in a nice way? But as an educator, I think we should be teaching our youth as well about this issue. And that's another thing I'm going to be focusing on as an educator, to incorporate that emotional, social learning into their life.
Huge.
Yes.
I love it. I'm gonna tell you, I'm a student of studying human behavior and human nature. I love sociology. I'm a student of emotional and social intelligence, the importance of that. That's my son is 9 years old. I tell him, son, you can get great grades, but if you're a terrible human being that's not in tune with who you are and not in tune with other people, it doesn't matter. And I truly, truly believe this, and I know some people may disagree, but I truly believe that we're moving into a space right now, Melissa. This is a whole different conversation. We ain't got enough time for this, but I truly believe that we're moving into a space where if you do not have a high social and emotional intelligence, right, and that you don't have a different consciousness to combat all of the BS that we've been taught over the years, then you're not going to be able to survive. That you're not going to be able to be considered a quote unquote critical thinker, because your intelligence is not able to withstand against all of the lies and all of the propaganda. So, social emotional intelligence is high up on the list for me when dealing with my children, because I want you to know what you're feeling, how you're feeling. I want you to know how to articulate that, and more importantly, how to resolve that, to do that level of self-regulation that is so important. If you want to be truly successful in this world, you got to do that. It can't just be on meritocracy by itself. It's got to be on your ability to know how to be a great human being. So I'm telling you, I love this stuff.
I'm so proud of you. I love your passion, and I love your show.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Melissa Parks, who is an educator and author, she hails out of the great city of Carson, California. She's doing the great work of being an educator and being a part of the solution. Folks, make sure y'all follow Melissa on her Facebook page, and most importantly, make sure y'all support her in purchasing her books. There you go. My man Keenan got it right. There she is, right there, Melissa Parks. So make sure y'all support her as she's been doing the great work. And she's being so good for the culture. Thank you, Melissa. We look forward to reconnecting soon. Thank you.
Such a pleasure.
All right, bye-bye. All right, folks, I got to take a quick pause. When we come back, trends, posts, and doing the most. I got some updates for you, so stay with us. It's the culture here on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Hey, Black, I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
We feel the hidden impacts of climate change that land harder in Black, brown, and Native communities.
Not many people talk about it because they clearly don't know our lives. But with President Biden's landmark infrastructure and climate plans, our issues are finally seen.
Removing lead pipes means we know our water is safe. Cutting carbon pollution helps our kids breathe easier. 1.5 million new jobs means stable work in communities. The impact we need
right now.
Folks, welcome back to the show. It's time for Trends Post and Doing the Most, where we tell you about trending topics and give you updates about some of the big stories we've talked about. And I got two big updates today. One is around the situation out of Oklahoma. Remember, we shared with you the story about the Oklahoma audio recordings that showed Oklahoma GOP officials saying some racist and conspiring about murdering some reporters. They were talking about racism and wanting to wish they could hang and lynch black folks again, and then talking about killing a reporter and their sons and their family members and throw them into a ditch. I'm not even making this up, folks. This just happened earlier this week. Well, the office of the Oklahoma governor, Kevin Stitt, who is a Republican, said it has received a letter, folks, of resignation from one McCurtain County Commissioner, Mr. Mark Jennings. He has officially resigned. As he has heard on those recordings, his letter stated that he was resigning immediately and that he would issue a formal statement, quote, in the near future regarding the recent events in our county. What the hell are you going to say, Mr. Jennings? I mean, seriously, you're on the tape. You said it. You said it. I synced it. You said it. According to Mr. Jennings, if you remember if you did have a chance to listen to the tape, Ken, take let's do quote two. Jennings allegedly stated that he would run for sheriff if the office allowed him to, quote, take a damn black guy and whoop their ass and throw him in a jail. He said, well, it's not like that anymore, according to another GOP official, Oklahoma GOP official heard on the tape, Mr. Clardy. Jennings replied, I know. Take them down to Mud Creek and hang them up with a damn rope. But you can't do that anymore. They got more rights than we got. Ooh, really? We got more rights than white men have in this country. Wow. Wow. Yeah, that guy, he resigned. But folks, it's like one of these situations. Yeah, they could step down from a position of power, but the mindset is still there. So you gotta like rid the whole. It's like there's the stench in the room. You gotta rid the whole room of the stench. And even though he may have resigned, his cohorts didn't resign, folks. They're still in the seat of power and influence. They're still thinking the way they've been thinking. And I'm not very confident that this one resignation is going to shift the conversation. So we will see how Oklahoma, the state of Oklahoma, deals with this. This, again, is with Oklahoma GOP officials, political officials, and law enforcement officials in Oklahoma County, McCurtain County, who is saying some racist things on tape. So that's one of the big updates for you. Also, let me give you another update very quickly, folks. Ahmaud Arbery's mother wants to meet with 16-year-old Ralph Yarrow and his family. This has come out as a result of what has happened to our little brother Ralph. And Ahmaud Arbery's mom, according to the reports, take a look at this here, folks. Wanda Cooper Jones, she tells us she has told her attorney, Mr. Lee Merritt, who is also the attorney for the Yarrow family, that if he could broker a face-to-face so that she could lend the Yarrows some moral support during this difficult time, as she went through something similar. She said Lee thought it was a wonderful idea, and the wheels are already in motion for a sit-down between them in the near future, although it's unclear exactly when it will take place. We didn't mention it yesterday, but I'll mention it today, that as a result of that tragic situation that could have been truly fatal, we thank God that he's been with our little brother Ralph in recovery. The doctors have said that he is miraculously recovering, well considering the situation that he was in. The other part of it is that as a result of that tragedy, the Yarrow family was able to raise $3.2 million. Yeah, folks, $3.2 million. They created a GoFundMe, and they were able to raise that amount of money. Of course, that will cover the expenses for little brother Ralph. And also, it will also, they're talking about putting a lot of that money away, because Ralph, who is interested in going to college, that they plan to use that money to cover the cost for tuition and any other therapy that little brother Ralph and the family, his immediate family, will need. So for those of you who may have donated something to the Yarrow family, just thank you for your donation. But that is a tragic situation. But we're going to see how Ahmaud Arbery's mom, hopefully that meeting will take place whenever Brother Ralph is able to make that meeting. And more importantly, that we continue to hold them in prayer and surround them in support, because sometimes that tragedy, and I can just only imagine for Ahmaud Arbery's mom, Miss Wanda Cooper, to hear about this story and not think of the tragedy that her son, who was just doing the simple thing of jogging through a neighborhood, only to be gunned down out of hatred from 3 white men. So we have to hold that family in prayer and continue to give them the strength. But it's a beautiful thing that she wants to lend her moral support to the family and to little brother Ralph. So big shout out to her. And of course, we're continuing to pray for the recovery of brother Ralph Yarrow. All right, folks, that's going to do it for me. I truly, truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you just tuned in to The Culture for the first time, or this is your first time, checking us out on the platform, welcome to the Black Star Network. We've had a very, very positive discussion about everything from politics. We talk about the culture from many different angles. So we welcome all of our new watchers. Make sure y'all go to our website today at blackstarnetwork.com. Again, it's blackstarnetwork.com. Download the app for free. I downloaded it on my phone. It's very simple. It's very easy. We don't charge you any money, because why? We want you to support us, and we want you to help us to build this platform that Brother Roland has started. So your support we're asking for financial donations, for you to give something as we are building out this digital media space. So again, blackstarnetwork.com. Make sure that you check out all of the great content. We actually were, and I think we've been running some content around, and I saw this earlier today, African American Mayors Association. I think they're convening, so that content is running. We had Reverend William Barber, the Morals Monday movement. We ran some content around them. I mean, all types of stuff is coming on Black Star Network, stuff that you would not see in any other space on mainstream media, any other place, about what's going on in Black America, with Black America, from leaders of Black America. So your support means everything to us here on blackstarnetwork.com. Also, make sure you follow us on all social media platforms at Black Star Network as well, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And while you're there, make sure you follow me, yours truly, Farajii Muhammad. I love to connect with you. Hit me up on my Twitter page. Hit me up on my Instagram page. Big shout out to my crew, man. Y'all keep me in the loop about a lot of things that are happening. Little videos that y'all be sending me. Say, Farajii, you heard about this? Y'all retweet my little tweets and everything. So I just can't thank y'all enough, crew, for the ongoing support for what we do here on The Culture each and every day, Monday through Friday. So thank you. All right, folks, stay tuned. Up next is Roland Martin Unfiltered. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll have another fantastic dynamic show for you again tomorrow. And we look forward to connecting with you soon. So thank you so much for tuning in to The Culture right here on the Black Star Network and, of course, on Amazon News. Looking forward to chatting with you tomorrow. Peace.